오래전 바닷길로 떠났던 당신이 세상 역경을 이기고 대한민국의 힘이 되어 하늘길로 돌아옵니다. 머나먼 타국에서 가슴 깊이 그리던 조국. 대한민국의 품으로 우리 동포들이 돌아오는 그날이 오면 배웅한 곳에서 맞이하겠습니다.
In our headlines on this Monday, October 21st, here in South Korea. Rampant reports of North Korean troop involvement in Russia's war against Ukraine has the latter's President Volodymyr Zelensky raising alarm about the broader international implications of the scenario. Meanwhile, over in the Middle East, Israel's military offensive against Hamas in Gaza continues despite the recent assassination of Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the appalling October 7th assault. And on the baseball ground, a much-anticipated game on this Monday evening, with the top teams from the regular season playing each other to win the championship title in the Korean Series. We start with strong denunciation from the Defense Ministry here in South Korea amid rampant reports of North Korean troop involvement in Russia's war against Ukraine. Our correspondent Bae Eun-ji starts us off.
A long line of soldiers are waiting to receive their uniforms and equipment while speaking in Korean. The Ukrainian Center for Strategic Communication and Information Security released the video on its social media channels on Saturday, saying the footage shows North Korean troops gearing up at a training ground in Russia's Far East. The center also released a questionnaire that appears to have been prepared by Russia for North Korean soldiers to provide measurements for military uniforms, including hats and shoes. This comes after South Korea's intelligence agency on Friday confirmed that North Korea had deployed around 1,500 Special Forces troops to Russia. Over the weekend, the National Intelligence Service even revealed 3 pictures, including a black and white satellite image depicting a Russian vessel departing from the North Korean port of Cheongjin, which is believed to be carrying North Korean soldiers. As more and more evidence supports North Korea's military deployment to Russia, South Korea's defense ministry on Monday strongly criticized the North. It called on the regime to immediately cease its actions, saying that the military will take necessary measures to protect the safety of Korean citizens.
North Korea's participation in Russia's war of aggression is a violation of United Nations resolutions and an illegal act that deserves condemnation from the international community. It's an act that seriously threatens our national security and the safety of our people.
When asked if South Korea plans to supply lethal weapons to Ukraine, the ministry spokesperson refrained from providing a direct answer, but said the government is open to all possibilities and that they'll review necessary measures while closely monitoring the situation. Also on Monday, South Korea's foreign ministry called in the Russian ambassador to Seoul to protest against Moscow's military cooperation with Pyongyang. Seoul's first vice foreign minister Kim Hong-gyun warned Russia's top envoy that South Korea will sternly respond by using all available means through cooperation with the international community. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that greater North Korean involvement would be detrimental to everyone should its troops become trained for modern warfare. In a video address on Sunday, he called for the international community to take a tougher stance against the North, amid continued speculation that it will become more involved in Russia's war against Ukraine. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, North Korea's allegations of South Korean drone incursions have been brushed aside by authorities and pundits here, amid indications that the incident itself may have been staged by the regime. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Regarding North Korea's accusations of Seoul using drones to drop anti-regime propaganda on Pyongyang, the South Korean government and military have reportedly concluded internally that no drones crossed into the north. According to sources, the administration and military tracked and analyzed flight paths on the days that the regime claimed the South intruded in its airspace, namely the 3rd, 9th, and 10th of this month. No military or commercial drones were confirmed to have crossed the border, hinting at the high possibility that North Korea staged the incidents. One government source said there was no reason for Seoul to provoke Pyongyang with drones, especially considering the risks of violating the armistice agreement. This comes after North Korea claimed on Saturday that it had discovered the remains of at least one drone sent from South Korea, saying it was the same type displayed on Armed Forces Day, a small long-range reconnaissance drone in Seoul earlier this month. An expert noted that North Korea's claims were baseless and unreasonable just by considering whether it was technically possible for that type of drone to operate as the regime claims.
Technically, the drone's flight range is enough to travel to and from Pyongyang, but the purpose of the drone itself is to film, equipped with detection sensors. There isn't enough internal space to store leaflets, and even if that's possible, the flight range would be significantly reduced.
While sharing the same view that this type of drone cannot fly to and from Pyongyang with leaflets as its payload is only hundreds of grams, lawmaker Yoo Young-won from the ruling PPP said the unmanned aerial vehicle unveiled by North Korea was likely a replica manufactured by the regime itself. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, meanwhile, maintained its ambiguous stance, saying there was nothing to confirm.
There is nothing to verify regarding the claim that any unmanned aerial vehicle from our territory crossed into North Korea. North Korea's unilateral claims are not worth verifying, nor are they worth responding to.
Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, Israel's military campaign against the Palestinian militant group Hamas appears little affected by its recent assassination of the group's mastermind as it continues to ramp up its raids. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
The Israeli military is continuing its offensives in Gaza despite the death of Hamas's leader Yahya Sinwar. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 87 people were killed by an Israeli airstrike in northern Gaza on Sunday. The ministry said 40 civilians were among the dead. However, the Israeli military says while it's confirming the exact number of casualties, its initial investigation shows that Hamas has exaggerated the figures. It added that the military is trying to avoid causing harm to civilians. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced on Sunday that Israeli attacks targeting pro-Iranian militant group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon are intensifying. He added that the IDF has been successful so far in not only defeating its enemy, but also destroying areas that Hezbollah had tried to use to launch airstrikes against Israel. Over the weekend, a drone was launched toward the residence of Israel's leader Benjamin Netanyahu in what he described as an assassination attempt. According to Netanyahu, the assassination attempt on him and his wife by Hezbollah was a grave mistake, and he vowed to continue fighting. The Israeli Prime Minister also spoke with former President Donald Trump on Saturday, where he emphasized that while Israel takes into account the issues Washington raises, it will be his country that will ultimately make the decisions based on its national interests. Thousands of protesters also took to the streets of Tel Aviv on Saturday, calling on the Israeli leader to sign a ceasefire deal that would lead to the release of the Israeli hostages. Relatives of hostages also took part in the protest, saying negotiations were long overdue. It's believed that 101 Israeli hostages are still being held captive by Hamas since the October 7, 2023 attack that sparked the current war in the region. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
We are now counting down about a fortnight to the U.S. presidential election, which takes place on November 5th. That being said, our Yoon covers the campaign trails of the candidates as well as their latest poll standings.
With the 2024 U.S. presidential election fast approaching, both candidates, Democrat Kamala Harris and her Republican rival Donald Trump, remain locked in a tight race. According to a new Reuters Ipsos poll, Harris holds a marginal 3 percentage point lead over Trump, 45% to 42% among registered voters. Scrambling for votes, the two candidates have been focusing their campaigns in the 7 competitive swing states. Over the weekend, Harris campaigned to early voters in Georgia. With polls showing a lack of enthusiasm for her candidacy among black men, who have been a reliable voting bloc for Democrats, Harris highlighted that they were not different from any other demographic, and their votes would have to be earned. In order for Harris to repeat Joe Biden's 2020 wins in Michigan and Georgia, she will need to win the non-white cities of Detroit and Atlanta, as well as their surrounding suburbs. Analysis of the Reuters Ipsos poll shows that Harris has overtaken any advantage that Trump had held among middle-income households and suburbanites, who make up about half of the U.S. electorate. Harris also celebrated her 60th birthday on Sunday, which she kicked off with a visit to a church in Georgia. Meanwhile, Donald Trump campaigned in Pennsylvania this weekend, and on Sunday handed out French fries that he fried himself at a drive-through window of McDonald's. A photo op, but also a jab at Harris, who he claims lied about having worked at the fast food chain during her college years. During a rally in Pennsylvania, Trump made derogatory comments against his opponent, prompting a response from Harris in an interview with MSNBC on Sunday, where she said Americans deserve so much better, and that Trump's behavior demeans the office. It is not uncommon for public figures to endorse presidential candidates. But Elon Musk, who has already endorsed Trump and committed at least $70 million to help the former president, has now pledged to give away $1 million each day until the November 5th election to a voter who signs his PAC petition. Legal experts are raising red flags about the giveaway because being a registered voter is one of the conditions to be eligible for the $1 million check. The main issue is due to a U.S. law that prohibits paying people to cast a vote or register to vote. For Harris, the Obamas will be making their first appearances on the campaign trail. She is scheduled to appear with the former president in Georgia on Thursday and with Michelle Obama in Michigan on Saturday. 이은진, Arirang News.
In local news, President Yoon Suk-yeol has called for greater police efforts to crack down on crimes enabled by artificial intelligence, such as deepfake fraud. The call was shared earlier on this Monday at a ceremony to celebrate Korea's 79th Police Day. Addressing the audience at the National Police Agency headquarters here in capital Seoul, the president asserted that police officers need to bolster their investigative capabilities to better reflect the rapid advances in technology to allow for a proactive campaign against crime. Exports for the first 20 days of this month, that is October, fell on year amid fewer working days. According to the Korea Customs Service on this Monday, the total value of exports amounted to $32.7 billion, down almost 3% on year. Despite this, some outbound shipments of semiconductors during the same period surged some 36% on year. Samsung Electronics is out with a thinner and lighter special edition of its foldable smartphone series. Now, earlier today, the tech giant shared the specifications of the Galaxy Fold Z Special Edition. The device weighs 3 grams less and is 1.5 millimeters thinner than the Galaxy Z Fold 6. It also boasts the widest screen for a Galaxy Z Fold series phone. The new model will hit the stores on Friday and is available in a single black shadow color. On the local baseball ground, the highly anticipated game between the Kia Tigers and the Samsung Lions takes place later on this Monday evening. Our Choi Soo-young covers the excitement and more.
On Monday evening, Game 1 of the 2024 Korean Baseball Organization League Korean Series will take place between the Kia Tigers and Samsung Lions. The Kia Tigers is the champion of the regular season this year, and the Samsung Lions beat the LG Twins in the playoffs by winning 4 games. The LG Twins was the champion of the last year's Korean Series. The Tigers will face the Lions at its home ground, Kia Champions Field, at 6:30 p.m. Korean time. James Nail will take the mound for the Tigers, while Won Tae-in will start for the Lions. In the 2024 regular season, the two teams faced off 16 times, with Kia winning 12 of those games. The Tigers and the Lions hold the first and second positions for the most championships in the history of the KBO League. The Samsung Lions has won 8 times behind the Kia Tigers 11. Meanwhile, the 2024 KBO regular season made history by surpassing 10 million spectators for the first time. Thanks to this surge, ticket revenue from the postseason also set a new record. According to data from the KBO on Sunday, revenue from the 11 games amounted to over $75 million. With the upcoming Korean Series, revenue is expected to increase even further. Tickets for Monday's first Korean Series match sold out within 15 minutes of going on sale. If the Kia Tigers wins this year's series, it will be their first championship in 7 years since 2017. Choi Hyung, Arirang News.
K-pop boy band 17's latest album has secured the greatest number of sales in the shortest amount of time among all K-pop albums thus far this year. According to the band's agency on this Monday, sales of 17's 12th mini-album, Spill the Feels, have surpassed 3.1 million following its release just last week. Now, this is the only K-pop album this year to become a triple million seller during its first week of sales. Meanwhile, the music video of the title track, Love, Money, Fame, has garnered over 33 million views as of this Monday. A Korean research team has adopted artificial intelligence to greatly reduce the time needed to test water quality from the current 6 hours to just minutes. Our Cha Yoon-kyung explains.
There's a long line of people holding buckets to get water, although the source is polluted. Even polluted water can be precious because more than 2.2 billion people, 1/4 of the global population, suffer from water shortages. There has been active research on securing alternative water resources, such as desalinating seawater, reusing rainwater, and storage irrigation to solve such shortages. Technology to examine water quality based on electrochemistry is widely used since it is easy to utilize. However, detecting only the ionic concentration of water is difficult because the measuring system is based on conductivity. To solve this, researchers have developed a new technology to measure this using artificial intelligence. Pollution levels show up on a screen quickly after a sensor is placed into an agitated sample of water. The new system detects the ionic concentration of the water just using electricity and voltage data, which makes it easier and cheaper to use and is also much faster. The system reduces the detection time from 6 hours to around 200 seconds.
We tried to develop technology which can assist in electrochemical desalination by applying a model that can predict the result with only a little bit of data.
The research team expects that this new system can also be applied to trace pollutants at industrial sites.
If this new technology can be applied to data from national automatic water quality measurement networks, we believe that we can expand this research that allows people to see a water quality forecast like a weather forecast.
The research team will continue to follow up on this research to apply it to national water quality management systems. A paper outlining the research has been published in the international journal Water Research. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Mexico's Navy has arrested 23 people in its largest ever drug bust, seizing some 8.4 metric tons of illicit cargo off the country's southwestern Pacific coast. Mexico's Secretariat of the Navy stated on Friday that the bust represents the largest amount of drugs seized in a maritime operation, unprecedented in history, and that the confiscated goods were valued at around $105 million. The Mexican Navy also said it has seized some 9,000 liters of fuel and 6 boats off the coast of Lázaro Cárdenas, and that the distribution of drugs in the small boats and 1 submersible vessel required complex action. The largest drug bust in Mexico's history was 23 tons of Colombian cocaine in 2007. In the U.S. state of Georgia, At least 7 people died on Saturday after part of a ferry dock collapsed, plunging at least 20 people into the water. Georgia's Department of Natural Resources, which oversees the marsh landing dock on Sapelo Island, said that the collapse occurred at around 4:30 p.m. local time as people waited for the ferry. They had gathered at Sapelo Island on Saturday to mark Culture Day, an annual festival that celebrates the island's historic black community. Peggy the Puggies, a British dog who starred alongside Hollywood's top stars in Deadpool and Wolverine, has been nominated for a Fido Award, according to organizers on Sunday. Fido, shortened from For Incredible Dogs on Screen Award, was founded by journalist Toby Rose in 2007 and is the closest thing to a canine Oscar. 5-year-old Peggy was recognized for her performance in her film debut as Dogpool alongside Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. According to Rose, the 2024 ceremony, which takes place in London in February, includes the biggest ever selection of dogs on the big screen and some standout performances. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
It was the coldest this fall, with temperatures in Seoul dropping to 9.7 degrees this morning. During the day, the autumn weather continued in cloudy weather. With chilly conditions, the rain will spread across the country overnight. From today to Wednesday, there will be up to 120 millimeters of heavy rain on Jeju Island, more than 100 on the southern coast, and 80 on the southern inland areas. Also, up to 60 millimeters of rain is expected in the center parts of the country. This rain will gradually stop from Wednesday dawn. Tomorrow, Seoul and Daegu will start off at 16 degrees. Daegu and Gyeongju will move up to 22 during the daytime. Gwangju and Busan, 23 degrees. As the cold air moves south behind the rain clouds on Thursday, the morning temperature in Seoul is expected to drop to around 5 degrees Celsius. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up now is our daily panel session.
오래전 바닷길로 떠났던 당신이 세상 역경을 이기고 대한민국의 힘이 되어 하늘길로 돌아옵니다. 머나먼 타국에서 가슴 깊이 그리던 조국. 대한민국의 품으로 우리 동포들이 돌아오는 그날이 오면 배웅한 곳에서 맞이하겠습니다.
Future of high-tech manufacturing industry. This is GFE's Hadong District. We want to connect you to a future of possibilities with our own resources and specificity by connecting spaces to save time and cost. connecting excellent infrastructure with technology to drive innovation. Opening possibilities by connecting technology with businesses. We will expand our horizons by connecting with the world. There is land that leads to a sustainable future. Taesong Industrial Complex, a cutting-edge material parts complex, is the best strategic industrial complex in the southern coast region of Korea. Karsaman Shipbuilding Industrial Complex, a shipbuilding and marine industrial plant cluster. It is a global logistics and industrial hub with convenient transportation and high-level accessibility, making it optimal for business investment. Starting from possibilities to becoming a global business hub, from an innovative industrial city to the center of high-tech future industries. It's the beginning for the future. Linking together, making tomorrow. GFES Hadong District.
North Korea's acts of belligerence continue with threats of war as the regime defines South Korea as a hostile state, calling on its troops to treat those in the southern part of the peninsula as enemies, all amid rampant reports that North Korean soldiers are joining their Russian counterparts in the war against Ukraine. Hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Press Perspective for this Monday, which is the day for our weekly rundown on matters of defense and diplomacy involving South Korea. Now, as has been the case in recent times, North Korea's acts of belligerence have been the cause of regional and broader concerns. For more on this, I have Chun Soram, a reporter for U.S. broadcaster Radio Free Asia here in the studio. Soram, welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Professor Choi Hyun-jin at Kyung University live on the line. Professor Choi, it's good to have you on.
Glad to see you.
Right, Soram, we'll start here in the studio. Now, there have been a number of disturbing developments here on the Korean Peninsula in recent days. Starting off with North Korea's accusations of South Korean drone incursions. We've also had North Korea's detonation of land links to South Korea, as well as North Korea's designation of South Korea as a hostile state. Let's start off with the allegations of drone incursions. Soram, what has been shared by the two Koreas with regard to this contentious matter?
So on October 11, North Korea accused South Korea of flying unmanned drones to North Korea, dropping anti-regime flags over Pyongyang 3 times earlier this month. North Korea's foreign ministry said it's a threat to their national security and it violates international law. So they demanded that South Korea should stop these actions, warning that if it could lead to armed conflict or even a war. They also made it clear that if it happens again, there will not be another warning and they will act immediately. Along with the statement, they released photos of a drone they claim they have captured. Then South Korea fired back, saying they didn't send any drones there. There is no proof that their military was involved. In return, South Korea's defense ministry warned North Korea that if they harm any South Korean citizen, the North would be facing the end of its regime. Meanwhile, South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff said they couldn't confirm whether North Korea's drone claims were true or not. And last Saturday, North Korean authorities insisted they found the drone remains in Pyongyang, claiming it is the same type used by South Korea's military.
Right. And now, Professor Che, as Sora mentioned, and also according to CNN, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff did not, and I quote, confirm nor deny the accusations by North Korea. How do you, Professor Che, explain this ambiguous answer, if you will?
Yes, it is true. The South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff gave a very ambiguous response to North Korea. But I think there are a few strategic reasons. The first reason is the staying neutral helps keep the balance between diplomacy and military action with North Korea, which is often very unpredictable. So by not confirming or denying, the South Korea can avoid giving the North a reason to escalate tensions. So this approach also allows flexibility, giving South Korea more options to respond later, while avoiding pressure from international or domestic audience. And there's another reason. By not focusing too much on one incident, the South Korea keeps attention on larger security concerns, like North Korea's other provocation, such as sending trash balloons or dispatching troops to Ukraine war. So this shows that the situation is very sensitive, and a direct response could lead to unintended consequences and making things more unstable. So this cautious approach by South Korean Joint Chief of Staff shows how complicated the geopolitical situation is. And I think in such a fragile security environment, giving a direct answer could easily lead to unintended escalation. So I fully agree with this response from South Korean Joint Chief of Staff.
Right. But in the meantime, Russia, for its part, Soram, was very quick to place its weight behind North Korea, calling on South Korea to halt, and I quote, further provocations. What do you suppose are the broader implications of this stance by the Kremlin?
So Russia's recent statement highlights its growing military ties with North Korea. On October 14, Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson said South Korea should take North Korea's warning seriously and avoid escalating tension on the Korean peninsula. Now, this statement came right after reports that President Putin submitted a bill to State Duma to approve a new partnership with North Korea. The agreement includes a mutual defense clause, meaning if one side is attacked, the other will step in for defense. And as Russia seeks support for its war in Ukraine, the military relationship between Russia and North Korea continues to enhance. And there has been talk about North Korea taking a more direct role in Ukraine. RFA recently interviewed a Ukrainian journalist who reported on North Korean troop presence in Ukraine on October 4th. She mentioned that along with her sources in Ukraine, military intelligence and citizens she spoke to have confirmed seeing North Korean soldiers in Ukraine.
Right, and staying with this, Professor Che, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has raised much concern about the participation, that is, of North Korean soldiers in Russian warfare against Ukraine. Now, speaking as a scholar, Professor Che, how should the international community respond?
So if it is true that North Korean troops are helping Russia in Ukraine, the international community must take strong actions, I believe. The first, more sanctions should be applied to both North Korea and also to Russia. And this will help limit their ability to work together on military issues. And additionally, we need to provide more military aid to Ukraine to counter this new threat from both countries. And another focus should be on preventing North Korea from gaining advanced weapons technology from Russia. North Korea might be looking for missile or other nuclear technology, including submarine technology, in return for their support. And that could make things worse for global security, especially on the Korean Peninsula and in greater Asia-Pacific region. So I believe that the international community, especially the United States and its ally, should use diplomatic pressure to break the Russian-North Korean alliance. And by cutting off their cooperation, we could push Russia towards seeking more peaceful solution in Ukraine without relying on Pyongyang. So these actions would not only defend Ukraine, but also prevent North Korea from gaining advanced military capability. And lastly, taking this action would send a clear message to the global community. That is, external intervention in the Ukraine war on the side of Russia won't be tolerated. And countries like North Korea cannot use this situation to improve their military actions. So this is what I recommend to the global community.
Right. And speaking about the global community, Sora, what are your thoughts on its efforts to rein in North Korea's defiant acts of aggression?
I think despite ongoing international effort, it seems difficult to avoid North Korea's aggression and its growing ties with Russia. However, there are some meaningful international efforts to moderate North Korea's provocation. For example, last Wednesday, the vice foreign ministers of the US, South Korea, Japan met in Seoul to discuss how to better coordinate in response to North Korea's actions. After the meeting, they issued a joint statement strongly condemning North Korea's continued aggressive behavior, including its nuclear and missile development, missile launches, and violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Also, last Tuesday, during a US State Department briefing, a spokesperson addressed on North Korea's recent blowing up of its inter-Korean roads, saying the U.S. is closely monitoring the situation in coordination with South Korea and continues to urge North Korea to reduce tensions and come back to the dialogue table. On top of that, an EU spokesperson told RFA last Thursday that North Korea could face additional sanctions if it doesn't stop supporting Russia's illegal war. He hinted that the EU is ready to take further action if Pyongyang continues down this path.
Right. Now, Soram, also during the meeting, the trilateral meeting among the senior diplomats of South Korea, Japan and the US, a new framework was announced to monitor UN sanctions on North Korea. Could you tell us a bit about that framework?
Of course. According to the South Korea's Foreign Ministry, 11 countries, including the US, South Korea, and Japan, will launch a new joint body to monitor North Korea's sanctions violation. The decision follows the dissolution of a UN monitoring body 6 months ago due to a veto from Russia. So the new group, called the Multilateral Sanctions Monitoring Team, or MSMT, is focused on ensuring accurate and ongoing reporting on how sanctions against North Korea is being enforced. Members include the US, South Korea, Japan, France, the UK, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The new body serves as a successor to the UN panel of experts on North Korea, which was disbanded in April. However, unlike the old body, it operates outside of the UN framework and does not report directly to UN Security Council.
Right, which is precisely why, Professor Che, some have shared skepticism about this new monitoring mechanism. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it is true that there are some concerns about this new monitoring mechanism called MSMT, mainly because it doesn't have a UN mandate, and which could affect its legitimacy, especially with the countries like China and Russia not participating. And also, that's why some analysts and scholars, worry that this monitoring body, it can only produce some reports, but they are not able to act that implement this recommendation, because China and Russia still possess veto power in the United Nations. But however, I believe that this MSMT still has some potential. The United States, South Korea, Japan, and other countries, including Australia, have the power to monitor and also respond to sanctions violation effectively, even without the support from the United Nations. And one of the key strengths of the MSMT is its ability to produce clear and also reliable reports. And if this team can maintain transparency and accuracy, it can build trust among the global community. And even though it's not a part of the United Nations, its finding could still influence major decisions, such as especially in finance and trade relations with North Korea, because ignoring this recommendation might have some negative consequences. And in addition, the UN sanctions on North Korea are still active, so we must remember this fact. And this gives the MSMT a strong legal foundation to keep monitoring and enforcing sanctions, which is so important nowadays as North Korea's military cooperation with Russia are growing.
Right, for sure. And Soram, in the meantime, North Korea has also designated South Korea, as I mentioned earlier, as a hostile state. And Kim Jong-un has called on his soldiers to treat South Korea as an enemy state. Now, do you believe the recent spate of belligerent behavior by North Korea could be an attempt to perhaps seek some form of leverage ahead of the U.S. presidential election on November 5th?
Historically, North Korea tends to provoke when a U.S. presidential election approaches. This year, while they are taking a slightly different path, tensions on the Korean Peninsula are still on the rise. North Korea has been carrying out provocation in various ways. Just last Tuesday, they blew up parts of two inter-Korean roads, the Gyeonggi and Donghae roads. Then last Thursday, North Korea announced, as you mentioned, that its constitution now clearly defines South Korea as an enemy, as a hostile state. This is the first time Pyongyang has confirmed their basic law has been revised to define South Korea as an enemy. Back in December, Kim already mentioned about this change, defining inter-Korean relationship as those between two hostile state, saying that reconciliation and unification is no longer a goal. However, experts point out that North Korea issue is not a priority for the U.S. at the moment. The U.S. has a lot on its plate with their economic challenges, Russia's war in Ukraine, and the conflict in the Middle East, and so on. So with the U.S. presidential election is just 15 days away, there is growing interest in whether or not North Korea will continue its provocation.
Right. And Professor Che, how do you care to explain North Korea's blatant belligerence in recent days?
Yes. So their actions and also their voices are very aggressive nowadays. But I think their recent aggressive move can be explained by both internal and also external factors. So let me begin from first from more internal factors. Kim Jong-un wants to strengthen his hold on power by using this aggressive behavior. By portraying South Korea as a threat, he can justify increasing military spending and also maintain strict control over the population in North Korea. And I think that this strategy helps unite the North Korean people against a common enemy, in this case, South Korea and the United States. And this sense of a threat can reinforce the Kim Jong-un's leadership inside North Korea. And the next, there are also more external factors as well. And North Korea may be trying to gain some leverage on the international stage, especially with the upcoming US presidential election in this November. So by escalating tensions now, they hope to become a priority for the next US administration. And they can also force the next the US administration to pay more attention to North Korea and possibly make some concessions in future negotiations with the United States. So they made some examples of this policy concession might be some lifting economic sanctions on North Korea. Additionally, North Korea's growing ties with Russia could be encouraging this aggressive behavior as well. And North Korea is now feeling supported by a major power like Russia. So because of this, North Korea might feel more confident in taking bold actions against South Korea and the global community. So this alliance between Pyongyang and Moscow could provide North Korea with military and also technological assistance, and this military aid could further embolden their position. So in general, the North Korea's aggressive actions seem to be a very strategic move to strengthen Kim Jong-un's internal control over the North Korean population, and also to gain external advantage, especially in the face of the upcoming US presidential election. So they want to gain some policy concessions, such as lifting sanctions on North Korea.
Right, and staying with Professor Che's theory then, this is an impromptu question, but do you suppose we can perhaps see some advances in easing tensions on the Korean Peninsula under a Trump administration?
So I did an interview with a few experts and some high-level North Korea defector, but they mentioned North Korea might prefer Trump over Harris because Trump and Kim had the history of had a meeting, so Kim has more preference to Trump, but then they pointed out that if there is no strategic move or preparation before the meeting, there will not be really practical. So that was the view of experts and high-level defector from North Korea.
Right, I see. Professor Che, I should have asked you this earlier, but I'll ask you now. Now, given the concerns regarding potential North Korean troop involvement in Russia's war in Ukraine, do you believe that the time has come for South Korea to consider military aid to Ukraine?
Yeah, we have some non-lethal military aid to Ukraine already. But now, right, it's a very difficult question. So your question is, whether we need to provide some lethal weapons to Ukraine, right?
Right.
Right. So right now, we don't have a clear evidence that those North Korean soldiers are fighting in the battlefield within Ukraine. But if we receive an evidence that North Korean soldiers are actually fighting in Ukraine, then I think we need to consider providing such lethal weapons to Ukraine as well to maintain some balance of power during this Ukraine war.
Right. It really is a difficult question, though, right, Professor Che? Right. All right, then I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Professor, as always, thank you very much for taking my impromptu question and for your thoughts today. And Soram here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right. Well, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.